Hi, good evening. My name is Siddharth Chandrasekharan and I go by Sid if that's easier. I'm a junior at the college. I study computer science and philosophy. This is my third time TFing computer science E75. I took the freshman intro class with David and then started TFing 75. So welcome to section. I'm really excited to be here. And I think today's section is going to be mostly a recap of HTML. And then a little bit of PHP that you've seen in lecture already. Before we get started, some logistics. So section will be taped, the section will happen in One Story Street, room 302, every week from 6:30 to 7:30 on Thursdays. And people from home, for the distant viewers, feel free to email me after section or even possibly during section if you have any questions, and I'm happy to go over them with you. Office hours are to be decided. We're still trying to figure out what is the best time. So look out for an email with when Alex, one of the other TFs, and I are available. There are 4 projects to this course. I think it'll be useful to go over the grading scheme for these 4 projects before we get started, so you sort of know what to expect. The first one is mostly setting up. The second one, the 4 are spread out over the semester. The grading scheme involves basically three parts. Correctness, design, and style. So each of these are a score out of 5. Correctness is, of course, if your code performs correctly. If you've taken a look, have you taken a look at Project Zero specs yet? Okay, so there are a list of specifications on the project PDF. So correctness is basically making sure that you sort of tick off each one of them on the specification. Design is not the prettiness of the page. It's not how much CSS you've used. It's not how beautiful it is, but in fact how well designed your code is. Making sure that your code a code flow makes sense. It's not distorted. And the third one is style. Style, again, does not refer to design or the beauty of the page, but in fact just the style of your code. So good comments and pretty printed, so you're indenting your code right. We'll go over some of that stuff today, but in general, just making sure your code looks pretty. While talking about comments, if you've seen these, there's a list of comments that people write. A list of comments that people have come across. So the idea is to avoid these kind of comments, keep your comments clean, keep your comments specify what exactly you do. There's a page, I can put this up on the resources page, and you can take a look at it whenever. So the other resources available are help@cs75.net. I'm going to put this up here. Between David, the 4 TFs, and we're almost always online. So feel free to email help@cs75 with any questions you have about logistics and the content. If you're not sure what a project specification means, email us and we'll get back to you within 24 hours. The other resource that's available is the Google group, CS75 Discuss. If you're not on it, you should email one of us and we can put you on it, or you can just join it. It's called CS75. CS75. You should just be able to find this on the Google Groups page, and this is a class-wide email list. So anybody who's in the class can sign up. Feel free to get in touch with the class as well, so that you'll have a faster turnaround time, and other people can learn from your questions. Cool. So I'm going to pull up the specification for Project Zero. So this section will be mostly examples to reinforce some of the concepts that you've already seen in lecture, as well as to sort of go through the projects and help you out with specific issues. So if you've seen this already, the first part is, of course, buying yourself a domain that you will work with for the rest of the semester. So the most common registrar that people use is GoDaddy.com. And you can pick a registrar. I think there's a thread on the discuss list about codes that you can use for discounts. So buy a domain, and once you're done, you have to create what is called a CNAME record. I'll go into what it is briefly, but before that, the list of instructions for how exactly to do this, specifically with GoDaddy, as well as other registrars, is available in the PDF. So if you pull it up, there's a link to a set of instructions that you can use. So let's talk a little bit about CNAMEs and A records, and then come back to sort of the logistics of this project. So when I think David demoed this in lecture, but when you type google.com, it maps to an IP address. So google.com is merely the alias that we give that IP address because we don't want to remember numbers. CNAMEs are basically maps. So a CNAME record is basically a map of a host name to another host name. An A record is a map of a host name to an IP address. So here, all your websites will be hosted on cloud.cs75.net. And the idea is for you to change the host name of your site, of your domain.tld to cloud.cs75.net per the instructions in the PDF. So this is basically an alias that, so when you look up this host name, it basically redirects you to this site. And since it has the A record of this site set, you can access it. So once you've sort of changed that and have it point to cloud.cs75.net, there's a survey. There's a survey that you can fill out about some general questions to get to know you better, and of course your domain, so that we can actually tell our sites to click host it. Yeah.
How long will it take from the time that we actually sign up with the registrar until the entry's been propagated?
Sure. So I think migration in general takes about 48 hours. Okay. So if you do this and fill out the survey immediately, within 2, maybe at the most 3 working days, you should be all set. So, any other questions at this point so far? Right, come on. Yeah, within 72 hours, if you've not heard back from us with your username and password, email us so that we can sort of put you on. We can check to make sure things are okay. And of course, the email to get in touch with is help@cs75. Let's see. So let's go through the actual specs of this. What kind of backgrounds do you have? Do you have some HTML background? Sweet. So I think the syllabus prescribes either HTML or some sort of programming language before taking 75. We're going to do a fair bit of HTML today. We'll go over the basics and zip through a few examples so that you can sort of refresh that. But the idea is that you have to construct a very basic site, one that uses CSS, one that has a few links, and I think 3 pages. At least 3 pages that are somehow interconnected via hyperlinks. And once you do this, you have to check to make sure that it works on multiple browsers. So the issue of why this doesn't work is why this doesn't work across all browsers is basically HTML is a markup language. So markup is basically a set of text of the form. In this case, some tag name, element, and close the tag. So all HTML is of this form. There are additional attributes within the tags, but this is the general structure of HTML. So the problem is each browser interprets this differently. So although there are obviously standards across how to sort of display them, browsers do make changes while they look through this text and write and display the page for the user. This is something we'll keep coming back to, but the idea is to build cross-functional, sort of cross-browser functional websites that work in all of them. Any other questions before we get started? Sweet. So let me open a new shell. OK, so I'm not sure if you have how much command line experience people have, but I'm going to go through some basic functionality. Some basic commands that are useful to know. So this is a shell. A shell is basically a command line where you can execute different commands. The most important ones that you probably want to know are make dir. Yes?
Well, where do you get that command?
Oh yeah. OK. Good. Thank you. Sorry about that. So if you have a MacBook, you want to use the terminal app. The terminal app comes with as part of the MacBook installation. If it's not on your dock, It is under the utilities folder in your applications. So once you pull this up, you can, this is basically a command line utility.
What if you have a PC?
If you have a PC, you have to download something called PuTTY, which I will,
Oh, PuTTY?
yeah. Let me just pull that up. So PuTTY is basically the same as equivalent, except that is specifically for SSH. We'll go over what that is in a second, but PuTTY is the equivalent of terminal for Windows. So if you have Windows, download PuTTY. It's a great tool, and it's free, which is really nice. So the general form is some command. So okay,
So
sweet.
at this point, we're logged into the actual server.
No, so right now we just open a brand new shell. You're on your local host. You've not done anything to get to your actual server. So I'm just going to go through some basic functionality before we do. So the first one is a list of all the contents in your directory. That is a command ls that lists all of it. So ls basically lists all of it. There are different ways to do it. There is ls, and there are command line arguments. So you can hit lsa for some more information, or lsl, which will list more information about the contents in that directory. A great place to look for any of these commands, and if you're not sure what it does or what are the other command line options that it supports, is called man. So man any command will open up this page that basically describes that is the actual manual for these commands. So it will, for instance, like so display extended attribute keys, or like the number of, you can have it display the number of elements in your directory, all through various command line options. So if you're not sure what exactly something does, you can always hit man and that command.
That's for Unix systems.
Yes, that's for Unix systems.
Is that true once you've done the PuTTY and?
Yes, yeah. So well, I just want to go through some basic functionality, and I'll sort of tie it in together so that it makes more sense. The other one, there's just two more that I want to show you. The other one is makedir, which, as its name suggests, makes a directory. So let's make a directory called CS75 section 1. Hit enter. It doesn't display anything, but it's done. Now let's check. Let's hit ls, and here's the directory. Oops, here's the directory that we just created. So makedir creates directories, and the other one that I want to show you is, now you have created a directory. How do you navigate into it? So cd, which, well, let's pull up the man page to. Oops. So these are a list of built-in commands that it lists, and so if you hit cd section, well, cs75 _ section 1, basically stands for change directory. So you're moving your directory into that, you're changing your position into that directory. The final one is pwd, which stands for print working directory. That basically prints where you are right now. So if you hit pwd, it says here's the directory that you're in. So let's try creating another directory here. Let's call it foo. So now we're in foo. I'm going to pwd. So we're right now in foo, and I want to navigate back to CS75 section 1. So there are four sort of arguments. I'm going to erase this part about CNAME records and A records. There are four. Let's do 3 actually. So this always stands for the current directory. So in any directory, if you type cd dot, it basically states and it stays in the same directory. So this refers to the same directory. So you're basically saying change directory to the current directory, so it does not move. The double dot refers to the previous parent directory. Which in this case is cs75 _ section 1. The last, I'm sorry, my bad. And the last one is the tilde, which stands for the home directory, which is the very beginning. So if you look at this, it says home / cs75 section 1 / foo. So cd tilde moves you back to the home directory. So let's just try this out. Cd dot dot goes to cs75 section 1. Let's print working directory to make sure that's where it is. And cd dot dot again, and we're here. So it goes here. I'm going to cd to my home directory, which is again where I want to be. So these are four or five like very basic Unix commands that are helpful for you to navigate once we figure out how to execute commands on the actual server. Any questions so far? Okay, so let's tie this into sort of how we're going to use it. So we're going to use so we have our local host, and everything that I did right now was on my local computer. So now we want to connect to the your domain. So you created your domain, and we're hosting it for you. You want to be able to access it. So the two things that are most important here are SSH and SFTP. SSH is secure shell. SFTP is secure file transfer protocol. There's another tool that is useful to know, which is SCP, which is secure copy. So all of these, the idea is to connect to network devices. That is, in this case, your local host and the actual server, your domain that it's being hosted on. So the format of SSH is SSH, your username, at your domain. So my domain for the entire course is ohioworld.com. So when I SSH to my domain, it's you basically SSH to yours, so it'll be your username at your domain name.tld. So it's always at the format SSH followed by your username at your domain.tld. Any questions?
You could use PuTTY to log in there.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what PuTTY is for. So once you open PuTTY, you open a connection to your username at your domain. So once you open this connection, you'll have a shell very similar to the one that I had on localhost and the one I have right here. Now, any commands that you execute here are basically commands on your domain itself. So here now we can use all the commands that we just learned. So ls lists all the files that I have in that directory. So let's hit ll. So it says who owns it, etc. And let's I'm going to make this a little smaller. All right. So here I'm going to cd to my public _HTML directory. So any files that are in your public _HTML directory are the files that are displayed when you go on your domain.com. So when you go on google.com, they have a public _HTML or the equivalent. They could call it something else, but like they have that folder, and in that folder they have different files that are displayed accordingly. Any questions so far? Clear? Okay. In this, the most important, the first file that we care about is called index.something. The reason I say index.something and not index.html is because we're going to have index.phps as well. So when you go on, let's do. So if you go on google.com and google.com/index.html, they're basically the same page. So when you go on google.com and don't specify a page within the public _HTML directory, the file that it automatically displays is the index.html in this case. So here, let's actually just print out let's actually just print out cat as another very useful Unix command that basically spits out whatever is in the file. So in this case, I'm just going to. So I just have a file that says that has like very bad HTML in it, but it exists, and cat just spits whatever is out in the file. So we're going to come back to this and sort of figure out how to write code, how to write HTML, how to set permissions. If you go on the website right now, index.html, it says forbidden. So we'll figure out how to change this, why this is happening, etc. Any questions so far? Great. before we do that, let's take a look at some useful tools with respect to the other two concepts that I mentioned. The first one is SFTP, which is Secure File Transfer Protocol. So there are two ways to get a file on your domain. One is to actually go there and create it yourself, so actually create the file on your host. The other one is to create it locally and sort of move it there. The moving is the Secure File Transfer Protocol. So there are applications for this. For Macs, the one that I like best is Fugu, but there are a bunch, and you can probably figure out you can probably pick any of them, and it should be fine. The other one, so here in this case it's Ojai World, and my username is CHANDRAS. I connect. And keep in mind that like every time you want to connect to these, you have to enter your password. I have SSH keys set up. You can ask me about it later if you want. But it basically like helps you sort of create a key for yourself, so you don't have to write your password every time. But this is my local host. On the left side, this is my local host, and this is my actual host. So there are different folders here. Here's the public underscore. Oops. Here's the public underscore HTML folder. There's the index.html that I was talking about, the one that currently says forbidden. So that is SFTP. SCP basically achieves the same thing, but using the command line. So instead of SCP is basically a layer on top of SFTP. Instead of using a nice GUI like Fugu does, and if you use Windows, the tool that you want to find is Secure CRT. Or a bunch of other tools. If you just Google SFTP free Windows, there are a bunch of tools that can do this for you.
FileZilla is another.
FileZilla is another. And if you use any of the sort of IDEs like Dreamweaver, they often come in with built-in support for this. So that's another way to do it. So
I have a secure CRT, I think,
Yep.
left over from an earlier course, which I took too long ago to remember what it was or anything. But I just tried it recently, and it asked for a password. I have no idea what the password
Right.
is.
So if you register your domain, you create your domain as per the first project's specifications, and host it. Fill out the survey. Have you taken a look at the specs yet?
And when you say if I've taken a look at
The specs, the Project Zero specs.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
Yeah. So there's.
I got my domain name, and now I'm waiting for. I'm sorry, I came in late.
No, don't worry about it.
But I got my domain name, and I'm waiting for an email that has some.
Yes. So that will happen over the next like 24 or 48 hours. And once you have that, there will be a username and a password.
Oh.
So in your case, so obviously it'll be a different tool, but it will be your domain .tld, right? So whatever domain you registered, and your username, which will be in that email that we send you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So once you do this, the password is also in the email. So all you have to do.
Understand that the program somehow or other knows my password, even though it's coming from you guys.
So it's not it's a password that we assign to you. It's a randomly assigned password.
Why does the program know what password you assigned to us?
Oh, the program doesn't. So once you hit connect, it will ask for your password.
Oh, it asks for a new password.
Yeah, it'll ask for. So it'll say. So let's say I do this.
I see.
It will. Oh, I guess this doesn't exist. So let's try Google.com. Although I obviously don't have an account with them. It should. This is a bad example, but like when you try to connect, it will ask for a password.
Oh, okay.
And you just have to type in the password that we assigned, and then you can change it the moment you sign into your shell.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So SCP is a command line tool. I'm going to try to let you guys figure this out because it's very useful to use the man pages to see how tools work. So if you just hit man SCP and figure out how to transfer files from your local host to your host, it's a good exercise. Any other questions?
Now, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that's what the SFTP.
Yeah. So
does.
SFTP is a protocol, and this is an application that uses that protocol to transfer it. SCP, on the other hand, is a command line tool. So like we did SSH, good enough? Yeah. So like we did SSH, like we did username at yourdomain.tld, right? SCP is another command line tool that you can use to transfer stuff from your local host to your website.
You mean it's an alternative to SFTP?
Yeah, alternative to using a GUI. alternative GUI is a user interface. So alternative to using an application like Fugu.
Okay.
So this is basically another way to transfer it. It does this exact same thing.
Does that also ask for your password?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it works the exact same way. So you except that everything is through a command line. So you don't sort of have the, so if you
won't see all of the files and all of
the. Yeah, so you won't have.
You just type it on the screen.
Yeah, so for instance here, it's all just a drag and drop thing, right? So I can just drag and drop. Right. Now let's see, I just dragged this file over. Let's see if it exists. ls, oops, let's do ll because where this, this was in my root home directory. So ll, here we go. This is the image that I just moved, that I just dropped over. So you don't have any of the drag and drop sort of ease, but you just use a command line. It sometimes is more useful than having an application. Sweet. So okay. So while we're at that, so while you're developing for any of the projects that you're going to work on, there are, again, like I said, two ways to do this. So one is to work on your machine itself. So SSH to it and make all the files right there. And the other one is to create the files and move them there. So I'm going to talk about one more tool that makes this very useful, makes it very easy to develop locally. It's called XAMPP. So it's XAMPP. So if you actually just Google for XAMPP installation directions, there is a let's see. This is actually a tutorial that one of the TFs from an earlier version of the course wrote. So it basically talks about how to install XAMPP and how to use it. We'll come back into more detail when you really need it for projects 1 through 3. But for now, just keep in mind it's probably useful to look through this and install it right away. Other useful tools. Live HTTP editors. I'm not sure if David demoed this, but it basically is a list. So let's close all of these. Let's open Google. Oops, where's the? OK, so here we go. So here's live HTTP editors. It's open. And it just puts out a bunch of headers that for every request that you make is sent. So it basically tracks all the traffic that goes out from the site and comes in. So all of it that comes into your local host. So it's another useful tool in case you want to see what exactly you're spitting or what exactly you're getting back.
It works with Firefox.
It works with Firefox. That's what I was going to go into.
I'm sorry. Where did that come from? And
so
how he's put it up.
Yeah.
Is that when is that recording an actual visit to a
yeah.
site?
Yeah.
And
so
what's the visit to the site?
So the actual request is made when you go on Google.com, right?
Okay.
So if you take a look at this.
Now, where did you get that?
So yeah, I'm going to go into that in a second. I just want to demo the functionality of the tool. You see all these like requests that are being made, like the user agent in Mozilla 5.0. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Oh, sadly I can't apparently, but okay, there we go. So the referrer is google.com. Like there's a cookie being set. So there's all this stuff going on that like we ordinarily don't see when you just open a browser window. So it basically sort of lets you take a look under the hood of every request that you make. How you install this tool is to use Firefox, the browser.
Right.
If you go on, so let's actually just go on add-ons. So get add-ons. If you all Firefox browsers come with this. So you basically look for live HTTP. Let's make it bigger, a little bigger again. Live HTTP editors. And since I've installed it, it doesn't show up in my results possibly. But yeah, here we go. So when you hit show all results, this is the add-on that you want to install.
Live HTTP editor.
Yeah.
Editors.
Yeah. So it takes you a look, lets you look under the hood. I think David demoed it, so I'm not going to go into it in detail.
Yeah.
But let me close XAMPP. Okay, so we know how to like open a shell, like we can SSH to this account, right? But let's say we actually want to create a file, right? We want to edit a file. We want to write some text and just edit it. So let's go to my public_HTML directory. And open index.html. So the command that I just used is called nano. It's the name of a text editor. It's a plain text editor, so it's basically like Word, except that all your commands are done within the shell. So when I open nano, let me make this a little bit smaller so that we can see the 1 second. Oops. Let's,
it looks just like Pico.
yeah, it's exactly like Pico. A lot of the same shortcuts are used. So if you 1 second, please. Let's make this really small, and then there we go. Okay. So if you take a look, this is the actual file. So this works just like a text file. It's just like opening TextPad or Notepad, and you can edit stuff, you can add stuff. So let's actually say, if you have any familiarity with HTML, this should be very clear. It's basically just a title tag along with a body tag. This is very poor style, very poor indentation. So let's fix that. So let's move this down. And now to save it, if you look at the very bottom, it says write out. So you Control O, and it asks for the file name to write. You hit Enter, and it just saved whatever changes I made to the file. Let's go back to the title and change it to from hello. We'll make it Oh Hi World. Once again, Control O to save it, Enter, and the file's been saved. Now let's try to go to my actual page and try to load it. So ohhiworld.com, index.html. This is the error that we saw before. So it says 403 forbidden, which means the file exists. It's not saying that it doesn't exist, but it sounds like it looks like the file does not. The people don't have access to the file. So let's exit this. Exit is Control X, and hit ls. Cool. So let's hit ll now. And if you take a look at index.html right here, this right here it looks pretty complicated, but in fact, it is a list of 9. It's a list of 10 blanks. So let me erase this and try to break this down so that we can figure out why exactly the page is not viewable. So there are 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 blanks here. And there are some letters here for each of them. So if you let's actually write out. Let me try to break this down. So this actually is broken down into it that way. So let's take a look at the very next line of that is listed. So it appears to be a directory because of the different color, right? JS, which is right next to it, appears to be a directory. And what is the one difference between that file and index.html? The D. So it makes sense that the very first one is a D to signify that it's a directory. These are permissions. So this, I believe it's U group. So let's actually make this user group and all. Let's write down what exactly this is. So this is RWX, nothing X, nothing X. So this is the current state of the file. Do you have any guess for what R and W stand for?
Read and write.
Yep. So and X?
Execute.
Yep. So for the viewers at home, R and W stand for read and write, and X stands for executable. So this basically says that the user can read, write, and execute this file. The group can execute this file, and everybody can execute this file. But executing here does not really make sense because we don't want to execute our HTML file, but in fact just want to display it. So what is the ideal settings that we want to have?
You probably want to have everybody have read access.
So everybody have read access. So let's put down OK.
I guess if there was PHP in there, would you need the executable?
So the question is, if you need PHP, do you need the executable? No. But
okay.
what are we missing here? We want the user to have write access. We don't want to change that.
Right. You leave the user alone.
So so we'll keep this at W. We don't need the X here because the user is also not going to execute it. So this is the basic this is the configuration that we want. So we don't need the D here. So because this is the file and the D does not exist. So this is the configuration that we want to get to. So what is the tool to change this? Has David done this? Does anybody know? Yep, change mod. So it's called chmod, CHMOD, and it's another Unix utility, command line tool. So chmod is of the form something something something. We'll figure this out in a second, and the name of the actual file. So this is the form of it. Let me make it a little bigger. 1 second. Let's. Okay. So chmod it's chmod something 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 and index.html. What this something is actually three numbers. It takes three numbers after the chmod, right? It takes three numbers that there's no space in between. I just wanted to show that there are three numbers in there, and the actual file that you're trying to change permissions off. There's a great tutorial on how exactly this works. So I'm just going to pull it up. You can take a look at it and try to understand what exactly is going on. But so basically, think of this sort of grid. The owner is the user, the group, and everybody else. So the idea is, in order to figure out these three numbers, right? You just write this grid out. So let's actually draw this grid out. Right, so let's write this grid out. So there's owner, group, everyone else, read, write, and X, right? So the numbers in the grid, so we'll just fill in the numbers that we want. Here we want a read and a write, so that's 4, 2. The group is again 4, 2. Here it's just 4 because we don't want the write. And everybody else is also just 4. So the number that we're looking for is 6. 6, 4, 4.
So it's just the bit positions.
Yes, it's an octal. Yeah. So we can so if you want it to be executable, let's you don't have to draw this grid every time. Obviously, it just takes a little getting used to, and then you will be able to do this on the fly. But let's say you want everybody to have everybody to be able to read and write, and the user to be able to read, write, and execute. What would the
766?
Yep. Because here you'll have a 1, and here you'll have 2 and a 2. So it would be 7, 6, and 6. There are more tutorials which I will point to. I think I'm going to put out, I'll fill out the resources section. There's also this thing called try-chmod, which is basically a browser-embedded shell, so to speak. So here, let's actually figure this out. So let's say, so right now, what are the access, who has access to what for personnel.txt? So what are the permissions on personnel.txt?
Users got read write.
Yep.
Got read write. All has read.
So users have read write. Group has read write, and everybody has read. So let's change this to nobody has read write except the user. So what would the command be? It would be chmod. What is the number that we're looking for?
6.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody else has read write.
Yeah, nobody else has read write. So I'm going to actually zoom into. Yep, 600. So you basically want to set nobody else has anything, so 600, and then the name of the file, which I can't spell. Okay, sweet. And do command. Oh, I guess that's weird. Let's actually do this on the actual. Here we want 644 as we talked. So let's hit that and hit LL. Let's make this bigger so that it doesn't overflow. OK, so index.html. Here we go. So what does it say? So it looks right. So it has the user has read write, which we just ran. The group has R. Everybody else has R. So let's go back to this page and see if it worked. There we go. So very often you will run into issues where so the other thing that you have to remember is directories have to be executable in order to make accessible. So there are two different things. A directory can be readable and a directory can be executable. I'll try to show you what exactly I mean by the difference. So this directory, for instance, is readable. which means you can see all the contents that it has. But making a directory executable makes all the files inside accessible to everybody. So if a directory is executable for the world, it means everybody can access the files inside that directory.
They can read them.
They can read them.
Okay.
If you give them permissions, individual permissions. So if they can read them if you give them individual permissions for the file and executable permissions for the directory that they're in. That make sense? Okay, well, you'll probably hit upon these as you sort of build your first project and run into issues. So just try playing around with Chmod. Make sure you don't give yourself no access at any point. So you want to make sure that user has read and write access at any point for any file or directory.
Are you going to do a little more about editing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to go right back to it. So let's go back to, let's actually create another file. Let's create one called hello.html. I'm not going to write actual HTML here. I'm just going to show, sort of figure out how exactly you edit a file on your host. You can, so the actual, once you open the file, so let's actually quit this. Oops. No. So how you actually open the file is nanos followed by the name of the file. The file already exists, it will open it. If it does not, it will create a new file with that name. Hello.html does not exist, but index.html does. So just open that file that we have. And within the actual space, it's basically the same as any text editor. So you can type, you can new lines, tabs, spaces, all of those work.
How do you throw in a comment?
It's basically the syntax. It depends on the syntax of the. I'm sorry. The question was how do you throw in a comment? The syntax of a comment depends on the language you're writing in. Correct? Because C and HTML, for instance, have very different ways of commenting code.
Right.
So in HTML, this is the format for a comment.
Right.
So you can say something. So you can basically write any text you want within this space. And once you're done, these shortcuts here say caret refers to control. So if you look at write out, it's Control O. And once I hit that, it's the equivalent of save. It says file name to write, index.html, which is the file we do want to write it to. We hit enter, and it says wrote 6 lines. So it basically rewrites this onto index.html. Now we want to exit the file. It's Control X.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
How do you cut and paste?
So cutting and pasting, it's basically Control C and Control V as you would do in normal.
And you can define. How do you define the?
You can use your mouse to select it.
To select it. Okay.
So you can use your mouse. The question is, how do you do Control cut and paste? You can use your mouse to select it, and Control C, Control V still work. Great. So there are some other text editors. So once you're comfortable with Nano, there's some others. He mentioned Pico. That's another very similar to Nano. Let's actually just open it just to show you how similar they are. They have some subtle differences, but they look very similar. So they're essentially, for our purposes, very, very much the same. Is that clear, or are you comfortable? It'll take a while to get used to it, but for now, I think we're clear on that. Okay, cool. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is a validator. So all the projects will have this one condition in their specs, which says your HTML should be valid. What does it mean by this? It means there are standards that people have defined for HTML pages, precisely to avoid sort of cross-browser failure, right? So you have a set of standards defined for each HTML file, and it is expected that your code follows those standards. So you can actually, so this, for instance, is very poor HTML. One of the reasons I did not do this is just show you like this is not okay. This will not validate. So let's actually type the address in. So let me make that a little bit bigger. Right? You hit check. It basically parses your HTML, and checks to see whether it sort of worked with the standards that are set. So here are the.
What you said first error? I got that when I was trying something.
So the error I believe is down here. There we go. So no character encoding is set. Character encoding sort of specifies how your text should be processed. There are different character encodings, and each HTML file should have a specified character encoding. And therefore, it says error at the very top of.
Was that doc type thing that you put in?
Yes, that is exactly it. So there is a doc type. Yeah. So there is a doc type that you will see on a lot of HTML pages. If you open the page, you will see that this doc type exists. This is basically setting the standard and like some other. It sets the standard by which your file is expected to be interpreted.
Well, I still got an error.
Yeah, so that sets the standard for which. So if you look at this is HTML 4.01 transitional. So this is it basically puts the name of the standard to which this page follows.
So you should expect that.
Yes. No, you should not expect that. You should if you just Google encoding, or you could just like copy the error, no character encoding found, and Google it. There's a line of code that you can insert into your HTML file to sort of satisfy the validator. Sweet. So the next tool that we're going to look at is called Firebug. I personally am a huge fan of this tool. It's another add-on for Firefox. So if you go on Tools, Add-ons, look for Firebug. That's the name of the add-on. It is basically a web developer's paradise for anything that you want to know about the page. So you can look at HTML, you can look at CSS, JavaScript, which we will see in later parts of the course. All of which are in this neat console. So it's very useful to sort of look at this. So if you take a look at here, there's the public the name of the standards that it's set to, strict, etc. So this is the character encoding that I was talking about. This is the line of code that you need. So it basically specifies that the character encoding is UTF-8. So once you.
Where did you find that?
So this is just some page this is just the validator's page itself that I looked at with Firebug. I just looked at the source of the page.
Oh.
So.
The validator's own page.
Yeah.
So if you cut that out and put it in your index file.
If you put it in your index file, it should work.
I'm sorry. How did you find? Oh, you looked under source.
Yeah. Yeah. I basically opened Firebug and looked at HTML. And HTML, it also collapses everything into. I sadly can't zoom into this more. Let's see if I can make it. Oh, sweet. Okay. So it also collapses things very neatly. So it does. You can sort of break each part down and look at them specifically, which is very useful. Cool. So let's go through one. Okay, sweet. So let's go through some examples for HTML. We'll just zip through them because you have experience. I just want to refresh whatever you know. So I'm going to open. So all my section examples will be on the course website by tonight. So if you go on cs75.net/sections or just open the sections page, it should have a list of resources in which all the source code will be there, along with any other resources that I refer to during section. The very first one is just prints "Oh Hi World." So let's take a look at the source of this page. Let me make this bigger. Very straightforward HTML. It just has a doc type, as well as like a title, a body, and some text within. The next one is a little better. It uses an H1 tag, which I'm sure you're used to. It's the first header, so it's big block text. And feel free to jump in at any point during the examples that I go through if you have any questions. The third one is use an image. So if you look at the source, it has a title, it uses an H1 tag, and then it also has this line of HTML for the source. And if you look at the actual source, it is the image itself. So
how'd you get that image? Just out of curiosity.
So if you go on when you're using it, so you can right click and you can hit View Image.
Oh.
And you can link to that in your page. So I literally just linked to the same page right there. The next part is internal CSS. CSS is cascading style sheets. It's basically a way to make your pages pretty. People can do amazing things with CSS. There are tons of examples on the internet for beautiful pages.
But do people actually write those using an editor, or are they using real tools to come up with
So the question was, do they actually write the code using an editor, or are there other tools? There are definitely tools to make life easier for developers, but I think most of it goes on in the actual code that they write, which is done in a text, not necessarily in a text editor like Shell, but one in an IDE like Dreamweaver. Right. So in the code here, there's this .foo, which defines the class. It basically is the style of a specific class. And in my source code, there's this class that I've specified for h1, which is in fact the h1 tag that I used. So when here the text is red and not black like in the previous pages. The next one is external CSS. So this I decided that we'll do a little bit of debugging. We don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to really quickly sort of go through some of the pitfalls that you come upon. So there's head, there's this body. The body is exactly the same from last time. And here, instead of the internal style sheet, instead of just saying here's all the style that this document uses, I've linked it to a separate style.css. So let's open this style.css, see what it exists. And it looks fine, right? Do you guys see anything off the top of your head that seems wrong here? There's a body, and there is there's an h1. There's a p that you use here. So the page should have a blue background, and the text should be in white. You guys see why this is not working? Any ideas?
Is the comment the wrong kind?
Yeah, the comment is in fact the wrong kind. So in C, for instance, uses this kind of comments to this is the syntax for comments in C. So let's actually open the CSS validator, which works almost the same way as the HTML does. But in both pages, you also have this direct input where you can just enter some CSS, and it will tell you what exactly you did wrong. So let's hit check, and oops. Oh. Sorry about that. Did that come back? OK, sweet. Sorry about that. So it says parse errors. So in fact, that was the line that was the problem. It was not our actual CSS code, but the seemingly right comment. And it turns out, while CSS supports comments, multi-line comments in C, so comments start with a slash, an asterisk, comment, and then close it the same way. It does not support the single-line C-style comments that it does. So let's try to fix this, because so there's this folder called sections, and there's week 1. Let's open style.css. So let's make this the comment that this sort. Let's make that pretty.
What does a VI stand for?
Oh, sorry. VI is the text editor that I use. It's basically the same as Nano, but it's a little more complicated. I find it more useful. So once you're sort of used to Nano or Pico, feel free to check in with me, and I can guide you through the basics of VI too. So let's see if that fixed it. Oh, there we go. Text is white, and the screen is blue. So keep in mind that if you have issues, it might not be necessarily with your code, but something else that you don't recognize, because it took me a good 10 minutes to figure out why that code was wrong. And then I realized it would be a good debugging exercise to go through. So things to keep in mind. And let's go back to more examples. Let's close these, close these. So week 1. OK, so we've done a little bit of form handling. I'm gonna go through this one more example, and then we're gonna stop. But we've done a little bit of form handling in lecture. So we have a basic form. The HTML is pretty straightforward, right? So you have an HTML tag. You have the head, the body, and you close the actual body tag at the end. This is the most interesting part here. So it has a form, and it has an action, which is linked to a PHP file. In the method, it specifies as get. There are 2 elements in this form. One is the text, and one is the submit button. So here it says foo. So let's take a look at the source. Oops. Let's take a look at the source. And in fact, it has the value foo. So that's why the foo in the file exists. Let's hit submit, see what it does. And it says, oh, hi, world, welcome, and something. so something is missing here because the text should have, after welcome, it should have said foo or whatever the text you gave it. So let's take a look at the source of the PHP file. Let's see. I'm going to quickly manage form to. Here we go. So PHP-S will be the source. Just the source. It won't do any of actual like PHP interpreting. But so if we take a look at this, let's set the chmod right. So chmod 6448. So if we look at this, it says everything is HTML except for the very last part, which says PHP echo post of name. Are you guys familiar with get and post yet?
Not really.
Okay, so let's go back to the source. Let's go back to.
Where it's open and you can, I guess post, you don't see the variables that are set.
Right. So post, you don't see the. So he says post, you don't see the variables you see. So let's actually run this and take a look at the URL here. It has this attribute, so it says name equals foo. Foo is a text that I entered, so presumably if I change this, that will change too. So let's make this foo bar. And yep, so that seems right? So the name is what is associated with it. So now we have to figure out from PHP how to extract that name. We'll do much more PHP and sort of go over the basics too, but I just want to give you a preview into what we will be doing. So if we open, let's oops. So let's go back and let's open the source of this. So this line of code is clearly wrong. Do you see why?
What's that exclamation mark?
The exclamation mark is part of the text. The question was it a problem, but that is not actually the problem. The way I submitted it was get, but here I'm looking for the post variable. So I basically misnamed. The post variable holds all the elements that you submit to a form by post, and the get is all the variables that are given to it in the URL. So let's just really quickly manage form. Let's vi 8 manage form.php. Let's change this to get. Let's go back here. Let's hit submit. There we go. There are a few more examples in the same page that I pointed you to, so feel free to look through the source of them. All the PHP sources labeled PHP-S. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes if you have questions after, but we will do more. We'll sort of take off from where we left today. We'll do a little more form handling, as well as some more basic PHP for loops, constructs, if conditions, etc. I'm going to stick around. Thank you for coming, and have a good night.